For a Thursday here. It's Thursday. Everything's turned on. Oh, hey, look at that. I hit the button and I didn't even have the cue up there. Usually I have that up there, but that's how we start it. But here it is. Welcome to Bid Nerds, everyone. We're technical dorks. This is your daily nerd out on the most interesting cars on Cars and Bids and Bring a Trailer. My name is John Polnik. I'm your host, coming to you live from Las Vegas, Nevada, along with my partner Michael Deeb, who is coming to us from San Francisco. There he is. Hello, Michael Deeb. How are you this morning?
Good morning, JP. What's happening?
We're just doing some bid nerds. What we do here is we talk about cars that we like on Cars and Bids and Bring a Trailer and sometimes some other auction sites. We tell you, the audience, what we think of those cars, and then we wait for you guys to tell us what you think of those cars. And then on top of that, we make predictions as to what these cars will actually sell for when they hit the auction block just hours from now. We keep track of our scores too, huh?
I don't think we should anymore.
Are we getting rid of that part of the show?
No,
all right.
Nobody cares.
Legit. That's a legit... So yesterday, we look. Our predictions are. This is not precise science.
It was yesterday.
It was yesterday. It felt pretty good yesterday. It's like we guess. Look. These cars, the value of cars are constantly fluctuating, right? Especially used cars and classic cars and enthusiast cars like the ones we pay attention to on these auction sites. And one thing, we could it'd be interesting if we predicted at the day a week ahead of time. The cars come out a week ahead of time when they hit the auction site. So if we, 7 days out, if we put our predictions there, it'd be a much different game than what we do. We predict the day of the auction, so we can kind of read the tea leaves, we can read the room, but that's part of the fun, right? Because you don't know. even doing it the day of, it's still pretty hard because the prices can just be weird sometimes the platforms are weird, sometimes there's goofy comments going on. I mean, golly. So we kind of play prices right. Michael Deeb goes first, and a lot of people think that's the easier way, and it probably is. I'm sorry, the harder way. But because I can then just bet the over or under.
And JP, you guessed yesterday. You guessed on the right side of me each time, but it was more than that because at the end of the day, on the Porsche, you got a Yahtzee, which means you guessed exactly what that car was going to sell for. So you did not just get lucky all day. You were on. You were absolutely on yesterday.
There's also the whole, I can't tell you how many times you pick when you go first, then you take what the number I was going to take. And I'm like, gosh, right. Well, now what do I do? Then I have to go on the fly. Then I have to have some coffee. So while I'm drinking some coffee, why don't we talk about the cars that we talked about yesterday? And well, hold on. Before we get to that, I will say that you probably clicked on this video because you want to see about this DeLorean coming up on Cars and Bids.
Oh yeah. That's
that
right.
is really cool. It's going to come up after we talk about yesterday's predictions. That'll be the first car we talk about. So you guys can see the links to all these cars in the section below. Anyways, go ahead.
I thought the DeLorean would be an interesting car to review because a couple of weeks ago, JP, we reviewed a DeLorean that previously belonged to Johnny Carson. And it was either you or one of our audience informed us that Johnny Carson was one of the major investors for DeLorean. And so while I understood in the ad that the car was a corporate gift to Carson, I thought it was from NBC Studios, not from DeLorean himself. So that car was technically a brass hat. And as such, JP, you remember that car went for like $125,000 or in that neighborhood, where DeLoreans don't normally bring that kind of money. So I thought this would be an interesting car for us to review because it's just a regular, slightly used DeLorean, and we could kind of take the temperature on the market for DeLoreans as they stand today.
Y'all in the audience right now watching this, this is Michael Deeb. He's trying to avoid yesterday. He's trying to avoid talking about yesterday. Yesterday was we already talked about it. We just went by. You did better and see you later. Okay, usually we actually talk about the cars.
Oh man,
see where we were. People are here. People want the information.
Unrelenting to the senses. All right, so yesterday we had a really interesting, eclectic group of I would say reasonably priced cars. These are all very attainable cars to most of our audience. Starting with the Porsche 951 on Bring a Trailer. This was a modified car, and JP, I don't know if you saw my email. This car sold on Hemmings auction platform in May of last year for over $15,000. So unless the guy lived in the same state as where this car was purchased, he had to spend some money to get it home, and probably spent a little bit of money on the car since he's owned it. And then he went and tried to flip it on Bring a Trailer. And JP, I have to scratch my head and wonder, if he had painted the spoilers black, would this car have had more curb appeal than this sort of boy racer 80s looking thing that he sold? The car sold for $20,000. JP guessed correctly at 20 and got the Yahtzee. I was over at 23. So that was a fantastic take by you. But man, talk about a hard way to make $5,000 if he made any money at all. It's really an interesting situation to see a car turn twice in such a short period of time.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, look, it's like how a flight to wherever he was. Where did it sell from in Hemmings? I mean,
don't remember. I don't.
Okay, worst case scenario, a flight was like $500 or $600, right? And then he flies down, gets the car. I mean, it was May, so that's spring. What a perfect time to take a road trip in a turbo 944. I mean, hell yeah, I'd do that any day of the week. That sounds awesome. Go get the car. Maybe you've got a night or two in hotels, maybe 3. So call it $1,000 to have a really cool road trip, and then drive this car all season. Maybe love on it a little bit, clean it up, sit it in the garage, and then 6 months later, throw it up on Bring a Trailer. And he makes $3 or $4 grand.
At least,
I think
I'm
down with that.
What happened? Yeah. So I think that's what happened there. Very interesting to see that car move twice. And well done by you. You nailed it at $2 grand. That was a great take.
Those wheels, I love those wheels.
On cars and bids, we also looked at a 2001 BMW 740iL. Super nice car back in the period. But JP said it's been pretty well documented that these cars have not aged well, and they are prone to some niggling mechanical issues. That being said, this car had reasonable miles, but cosmetically was not a very well-preserved example. I still believed in the car because I remember how hot they were back in period. I thought this car would easily bring $10,000. You conservatively bet under me at $9,500, and this car sold at $8,100. I say, still, in my heart, I think that's really well bought. Unless it's just a complete roach mechanically, and it gets stuck with $3,000-$4,000 in repair costs.
I gotta disagree. I mean, I think that the car. Look, I bet under you, and I bet a little closer to your bet just from a Price is Right kind of point of view. But if I really had to give a hard blind number, I would have been like $7,000. I mean, this thing, there's a million of them. They're everywhere. And don't get me wrong, I like them. I actually think they're one of the coolest looking sedans of all time. But because they are overly complex, and they got a lot of plastic bits in the engine, and it's well documented how problematic they can be, in a very kind of like hand grenade in the engine kind of way. Not like, okay, the coolant tubes, expansion tank broke, so you got to replace it. We're talking like engine's gone kind of deal.
See, listen, on this exact platform, they made a 750iL with a V12, and I would expect those cars. I would expect those cars to bring extremely soft numbers, but a 70,000 mile 740iL, I would think that car, especially just 70,000 miles in 20 years, I would think that car would still have some value in the teens. The fact that it's sold for 8,000 just seems like they're a screaming bargain, unless they're just total piles of junk all these years later, which is what you're kind of alluding to. So an education for me to see how soft those cars are, and maybe a tiny bit of buyer beware. So there you go. That's a great bid nerd take to kind of learn about those vehicles, because I certainly would have assumed otherwise.
There are absolutely people who disagree with me and love those cars, but clearly the prices are what they are, and I think that's just because there's a lot of them.
Yeah,
all right.
Well, you were spot on that one. Okay, probably the most interesting car of the day, not our star car, but the interesting car, was this 2001 Cavalli Mangusta. Super interesting car in that these cars were designed by Di Tommaso as their new sports car, but had trouble being imported into the United States. Cavalli, a luxury car dealer in San Francisco, was the white knight to save this. To save these cars from either being exported or thrown in the scrap heap, and helped to federalize them and sell them in the United States. They're very rare. They employ Mustang Cobra motor, Brembo brakes, and Tira wheels. Marcello Gandini design. Neat car with 3 different tops, full convertible, a bolt-in-place Targa rear window and crossbar, or you could put the Targa in place and make the car a coupe. Super unique. But JP, I would agree with you. As much as it pains me to hate on a sort of boutique Italian car, this thing is ungainly from just about every angle. Mm-hmm. Try as they may, these cars were not pretty. And they were not commercially successful at all. Cavalli was the white knight, but I'm not sure that he ever got his investment back by selling these cars. I guessed 30, you guessed 31, and our 10,000 mile example, which I think was out of like Texas or something, brought a whopping $35,250, which I would just say off the cuff is probably one of the highest price paid for one of those in the last 5 years. So anyways, there you go. Cavalli Mangusta. Perhaps a future collectible, JP, despite our not being terribly impressed with it.
Yeah, neither one of us like it, but and I bet the over. And again, once again, not because I really believed in the car and want one or think that it's reading the room and reading these auction platforms. Yeah. And there was a lot of there was a surprising amount of action on the car.
Yeah, there was several couple dozen bids when we were looking at it with several hours to go, mm-hmm. and then that car obviously had a late rally because it ran right past our bids and on up to 35,000. So congratulations to the seller. The biggest I'm digging that
the Tesla Roadster in the background on this one. That's way more interesting. It's like, are we selling that?
This guy's got taste for sure. This guy's got taste for sure.
Eclectic taste.
We may look at a Tesla Roadster later in the week if we have time, which would be really cool. Perhaps the most surprising one to me today was the 1995 Mercedes-Benz C36. This was like a 60,000 mile car, triple black, beautiful. The first AMG model that Mercedes built after acquiring AMG and making them a subsidiary company. This car was in really nice condition, and I thought this might be one that would have really nice late rally because I haven't seen one in this nice a condition or with this low miles in many years. Thomas Kopech from God and Porsche is dying to buy one of these things someday if his wife will ever let him. So there you go. Shout out to Thomas. I said 22, which was way. I know you were thinking in the high teens or mid-teens of this car, but I'm certain that my bid pulled your bid up to 20. This car sold for a depressing $16,750. JP, I got to tell you, my wife would have killed me, but I would have loved to purchase this car and had it as my daily driver as we look to move back to Vegas. I think this would be a fabulous car to drive around on a day-to-day. This is, I mean, less than 17 grand for this thing? What a car.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's so funny that a C-Class, and now we're not talking about just a normal C-Class here. Obviously, this is the AMG C-Class with all the whiz-bang of it. It's still a C-Class of the same era as that 740 BMW that we were just talking about, and which was the top of the line basically for BMW at the time in the same era. And you and I are all over this Mercedes. We'd way rather have the little C-Class here than that BMW. At least I'm speaking for you, but.
Think about this, though, like JP, the early 90s and mid 90s Porsches have all gone through the roof, right? Yeah. I mean, I guess you could say 993s are still a tiny bit soft from the depression of the market over the last 3 or 4 years. But 964s, the early 90s, those cars have flown through the roof. I mean, they are almost unattainable to the everyday person. So this as an alternate, as an era car, a Radwood car, something from that generation when we were in our young 20s and getting our footing in life as independent people from our family, this car was just, fantasy to me that I could ever have a C-Class C30. Yet now they're, less than a Volkswagen Golf or a Honda Civic. That's crazy.
Now, if you had a two-car garage and you're doing the DWA drivers two-car solution game that they always play, shout out to our friends at Driving Well Awesome, DWA, Lane and all the boys over there. They would say, hey, you have a two-car garage and you can only put 2 Mercedes in it. How badass would it be to have that C36 and your 190 Cosworth next to one another? That would be the perfect two-car solution right there if you had to be in the Mercedes game.
I will tell you, I lived in the same apartment building as my father when I was in my late 20s, and I had a 190E.
That's a way of saying I lived in my dad's house with my dad.
I did, I know. It sounds like it, but it's not the case. I did pay my own rent. But anyway, I had a 190E, and he had a 500E, and they were both the blue Schwartz. And we parked the cars side by side in the garage of the building, and I have to tell you, it was very cool. Very
obvious
cool
joke said on a regular basis, your Schwartz is as big as mine.
Yeah, absolutely. Or may the Schwartz be with you. All right, so the last car of the day was maybe the coolest car of the day, the 1973 Citroën SM. I think we converted another non-believer to the Citroën or the French car revolution, and that is John Polnik, who absolutely loved this car after taking a closer look. The interior got him going. I think the Exotica made you take a second look at it. Certainly a car you don't see every day in the United States. This one was a collaboration between Citroën and Maserati in the early 70s after Citroën acquired Maserati for a period of time in the late 60s. This car used a 3-liter V6 and air suspension, and they were just really cool. They hold their value pretty well. If this car were nicer cosmetically, this would have easily been a $40,000, $50,000 car. Ours had low miles, but some unreasonable wear and tear on the interior. I guessed 23, JP guessed 24. The car sold for $25,987, making it, yes, if you're scoring this at home, JP get a complete Bid Nerds wash yesterday and won all 5 of the auctions, including the Yahtzee on the Porsche 951. That, my friends, is an ass whooping. There you go. Congratulations.
Somebody
JP.
send me a gold star. Look, this Citroen is so cool. Yes. It's not that I didn't like them. It was like, wow, really looking at it going, it surprises me how much I like them. And particularly this 2-door. I mean, you've seen the 4-doors around. They're in all the old movies and stuff like that. But seeing this 2-door one is just getting me going. This is certainly not a car that would be on the top of any collector's list, right? It's not like, okay, I have, a little bit of room. I've got room for 3 or 4 cars in my garage or whatever. This one is definitely, I'm getting a Citroen. The first car is a 911. The first car, or I got to get that first Ferrari, or I got to get something, right?
Mustang.
Yeah, whatever it is that you're into. But when you have those 3, 4, 5 cars that you've always wanted, and then you get a little bit more space, this is one of those cars that you're like, I need to carve out a little bit more room. Because I want this, it's like, it's not something that anyone's looking for. Well, maybe there probably is someone that's looking for one of these, but for the most part, car collectors don't know what this is. This is the kind of thing you come across. You're into cars. You just got rid of, you just sold that 914 project that you know that you're never going to complete, and you come across this, you're like, man, I could wedge this in between the 355 and the 911. So yeah, but yeah, I really want one, but it's probably not going to happen because I don't have that much space.
Outside of a Frenchman, I don't know who would have this on their short list at all. It really is an obscure car. But by all accounts, they are fabulous driving cars down the road. If not, they might not be, the Angel's Crest weapon of choice. Yeah. But as a cars and coffee or a boulevard cruiser, that'd be a fun car to have on, like a vintage rally. Yeah. There you go. All
hey,
right,
Mike, before we get to the cars today, which we're really excited about, everybody wants to hear about this DeLorean. Can you turn your audio up just a quarter smidge? Sorry, guys. Maybe it's that the espresso that my lovely wife has delivered to me, but getting a little jacked up here.
Testing 1 2. Does that sound a little bit better?
We're going to go with it. Nobody wants to hear our technical jargon. Let's move on to the DeLorean. What do we got here? Let's talk about this thing. Look at this.
Okay. So where is this car? This car is on Cars and Bids out of Torrance, California. is a 1981 DeLorean DMC-12, 5-speed manual, largely unmodified, just 28,000 miles. Super cool, no nonsense, regular used car condition. JP, there's a photo that comes in early from the interior. The dashboard was signed by Christopher Lloyd. That is the gentleman that played Doc in
Doc
Back
Brown.
to the Future.
Yeah,
Doc Brown
look at that.
Back to the Future. How's that for a cool interior accessory? Christopher Lloyd's autograph across the dashboard. I think that is a very, very cool touch. This is a no-nonsense car, JP. The glove box, iBox springs that make it kind of like Euro spec ride height, a battery cutoff switch, later door locks and keys, and they changed the rear view mirror. Other than that, this car is bone stock, low miles, no nonsense. You just don't see them very often. They employed a uninspiring 2.8 liter V6, but the rear wheel drive mid-engine manual transmission, the louvers, the sort of bare steel or aluminum panels really did give this car a futuristic look. And they're a footnote in history because DeLorean got in trouble for all the money he didn't have. I think he went out and tried to make a drug deal to help fund his company. I think his heart was in the wrong place, but his brain got him in the way. He wound up being run off to jail, and this car company was stillborn and never went any further. But the movie made this car an icon. And again, in the same breath, JP, that you speak of that Citroen, this wouldn't be a car that's on anybody's short list. But if you were trying to round out a very interesting collection of cars, I would imagine as an American, as a kid our age, a DeLorean might be on your second or third level of car collecting. If you really rounded out your car to include more than a dozen vehicles, I could see a DeLorean being put away for a long time and easily being speculated on by somebody who thinks these are going to be $150,000 cars someday, which they may.
Yeah. I mean, yes, they have the Gen X appeal because we grew up with the movie Back to the Future. But, clearly what's the movie Ready Player One? The car was so as iconic there as well. So a whole new generation being introduced to the car if they hadn't seen it already in old movies that their parents watch. Look, these cars, the weird thing is parts are very available. There's a guy in the Midwest that got all the original parts for them and has them in a warehouse, and so you can actually get them. But like most cars that people collect, they want them original. And I got to tell you, this is a car that there's a few people that have done some LS swaps and stuff like that for this thing. Oh, yeah. And this is a car that you just don't want original. I would way rather have a fully modded one because Doc Brown and Michael J. Fox trying to get to 88 miles per hour. Marty McFly had what is it? Fast and the Furious, they're known for the silly, quarter mile races that take 4 minutes. They have a long scene where they're shifting 14 times and stuff like that, movie type stuff. But in Back to the Future, when it's taking them, a minute and a half, 2 minutes in the movie to get to 88 miles an hour, they're not joking. That's how long it takes one of these to get there. And that one was an automatic in the movie too. So it's like, oh, dear Lord. This motor is derived by, I think, Peugeot, Renault, and Volvo or something like that. PRV, if I'm doing it correctly. Mm-hmm. The motor only made 130 horsepower and had 153 pound-foot of torque. So, I mean, even a Honda S2000 motor would be more fun than this thing, I mean, what were they thinking back in the 80s? I mean, you have access to Chevy 350s or small block, Ford. Yeah. There's so many different engines that you could have gotten probably for less money from the States to put in this thing that would have made it way cooler, like a Di Tommaso or something like that, like a Pantera. Yeah. But, total fail in so many levels other than the way it looks. Just stellar. Yeah. One of the best looking cars of all time.
A Ford or GM small block would have made this car dynamite. I mean, it would have been crazy. Yeah. And if DeLorean got hauled off to jail, somebody else would have bought all the tooling for this and then continued to make them, which is a bummer.
Especially, exactly. Yeah. All right. So where's it sitting at right now? How many bids we got? Where was this car again? Where is it sitting? Where is it?
Chippy, not far. This is in Torrance, California. So
it's right here.
This is a 7-iron away from the PEC LA. Mm-hmm. It's sitting at $34,666 on 34 bids. And again, that's interesting because the 20,000 mile car we saw that belonged to Carson went for $125,000, which is an amazing price to pay. But this is more reflective of the current market for a DeLoreans. This is a nice one, not a lot of stories, and it's a pretty reasonable price. With that in mind, JP, I put down that I think this car will continue to climb. I wrote down $50,000 last night. It's sitting at 34 bids with almost 3 hours to go. So I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to say 50 grand. It's probably going to come in a little under, but I think if it, when do you see a nice one like this? I mean, most of them have more miles. They've been driven.
Here we go. You took my number again. I think that if it were on BAT, maybe a little bit more. This will be an interesting test for Cars and Bids and Doug DeMuro over there to see how, if his auction platform is gonna find some people that spend more than $25,000 on something. I mean, there are cars that go for more than that on Cars and Bids, but rarely. And the really big cars, really special cars seem to fail. But run-of-the-mill enthusiast cars seem to do pretty well on this site. Is there someone with $50,000 in their pocket on Cars and Bids ready to spring for this car? I'm gonna say not quite and go. Wow. 48. I'm going to say it doesn't break 50. It should. I mean, it's a 5-speed and it's got low miles. If it were an automatic, I think I'd be surprised if it even makes 30, which this one's clearly above that. So, I'm going to bet the under, because that's a long way to go, even with that much time. So
it is. But Christopher Lloyd signed the glove box, JP.
That is pretty legit. That's got to be worth $5 grand right there.
Oh my God, yeah. I think you're in big trouble today. All right, so
I want to be wrong on this one. I want to be wrong. I'd like to see it go for more.
I am unashamedly a huge fan of Honda's S2000. On Bring a Trailer, we found a 2002 example with 29,000 original miles. JP, I remember when this car was being announced, there is a famous clip of a Japanese driver doing early testing on an S2000 before the car was launched at the Nürburgring. And that guy is flying in the car on the ring. And the footage of this car bouncing off the curbs and coming over and getting like light over some of the jumps at the Nürburgring. The car that the driver is in is a black S2000 with red interior. So
they call that a lobster, right?
Yeah, I have to admit that I always thought that the black with the red was kind of one of the coolest colorways that you never see in the U.S. Yeah. So this 2002, if I remember correctly, and my friend Jeff Harley's going to kill me if I get this wrong, I believe 2002 was the first year of, it's an AP1, but it's the first year that they moved to a glass rear window in the convertible top. The earlier AP1s, JP, had a plastic window that easily starts to yellow and get, that sort of hazy look to it. But the glass was a big upgrade, and of course it had a defroster, and I think made the cars more livable on a day-to-day basis. AP1s have a taller first gear, JP. They have no traction control, a quicker steering ratio, and a more rev-happy nature, because these are just 2 liters that rev to 9,000 RPMs. AP2s have, more largely spaced gearing. They have a slower rack. They have a traction control system, and they employ a 2.2 liter that only go to 8,000 RPM. So the AP1s, I think down the road, although the AP2 is the car you'd want to live with if you're going to drive the car on a regular basis, I think the AP1s are destined to be the better collector car moving forward. And this one, with just 29,000 miles out of Charleston, South Carolina, looks to be in that quality condition. It looks fantastic from the images shown here. No stories, really nice, unusual colorway, a beautiful AP1 sitting at $22,000. Which is right around the price you would expect somebody to pay for one with maybe a few more miles on it. So this car's got some room to go. What do you think?
Yeah, man. I mean, one of the best cars of all time. It's amazing that, between this car and a Miata, which on paper, so many things are the same here. And you look at, Miatas are great cars. You cannot knock a Miata. But they have so many things wrong with them there's something that's difficult to love about a Miata if you're if you're a dude, if you're a car guy, a Miata is a great car functionally, but it's just no one looks at a Miata and goes, I really want that. Everyone looks at a Miata and goes, man, this thing's going to be fun no matter what. It's just they never, ever, ever looked tough enough for a guy to feel comfortable driving one of those around. Whereas something about the S2000, man, right out of the gate, their first boom, it's like, I would drive this car, and not even as a guy my age. It really is a young guy's car. It's a 20-something-year-old guy's car, but I wouldn't be embarrassed to drive one of these. In fact, I would totally rock it, and especially one this color. Oh, man, this thing is unbelievably beautiful.
Miatas feel like an S2000 without the VTEC. They have, they're super efficient packaging. The car is wrapped around the driver in the cockpit. There's no waste of space. But Miatas don't go anywhere. They don't have any speed, whereas these cars are 2-liter, 240 horsepower, 9,000 RPM, normally aspirated. The VTEC kicks in, and it feels like it's turbocharged. These cars are a blast to drive. And the shifter in these cars, JP, I'm telling you, you can shift it with your wrist. You just click, 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 and you're in all of the gears. It's just a spectacular drive. The motors are hand-built, and the cars handle like they're on rails. They're unreal.
Forget the power. Yes, I know they shift where, I know they handle great. I know they do all those things way better than a Miata. I mean, they were more expensive than Miata, let's face it. But it's still, even, if you build a Miata, you can get it to be as fast as one of these. There is no lust when you look at any generation of Miata. There's no Miata that I want. Yes, I would like to have one as a track car that I wouldn't care about if I wrecked it. But I would not want to be seen on the street in one. I mean, if I was a 20-year-old kid, awesome, do it. But I'm not. I can't. You and I would look so stupid in Miata. Everyone would be like, But if you or I were driving around this car, everyone would be like, wow, that's really nice. So I just, from a sheer aesthetic point of view alone, the S2000 is far superior. $22,000, just over that, with an hour and a half to go. Where do you think this thing's going to land?
So, JP, just a couple more things. This car looks like it's been lovingly cared for by its owner. It has Bridgestone SO2 tires, which were the original tire that came on the car. Now, not the original set of tires. These
I was going to go,
2015. But the fact that somebody sourced out those tires, that's attention to detail that only somebody who really cared about the car would bother to do. Something like Jeff Harley would do for his S2000. So 12 bids is not a lot of action, but I say that this is a really nice car that has a cult following. And as such, I think it's going to bring $30,000.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. This is tough because, I mean, you see him go under 30 all the time with low miles and stuff like that. But with this color combination, that is, that is tough. I'm gonna bet the under because it's winter. If it were spring, I think this car brings 10%, 15% more money that's going to bring today. So you said 30, I'm going 28.
Yeah, I'd say, you know what, JP, that's a really good point. Very good take. And that might be the case.
Awesome road trip back to someplace warm, though. If you're in California, you want one of these, fly out to North Carolina and have a great drive.
Charleston, South Carolina. Yeah,
South Carolina,
southern home to the West Coast. And that would be an amazing road trip. So there you go.
Go down to Texas, hit South Padre Island for a week or something like that, and just chill, man.
Well, in South Padre Island, Texas, the restaurants are open, the bars are going, the live bands are playing, and the crowds are gathering. So get your drink on in Texas right now. They are open for business.
Go down to Brownsville, pick up some CDs. Anybody that knows me can ask me about that, but whole story.
All right, JP. Also on Bring a Trailer, we found another freaking gem.
They were special import CDs. Sorry.
A very, very rare to find it in this condition out of San Mateo, California, is a 1987 Volkswagen Golf GTi 16 valve. This is a no reserve auction. This car, ladies and gentlemen, this car is going to sell with about 4 hours to go. It's at a whopping $15,000. But I defy you to find another 16,000 mile example as clean as our car here. In silver with the multicolored velour interior and vinyl shoulders, manual transmission. I think, JP, did they call those the teardrop wheels? Is that the right name?
That is correct, sir.
Yeah, teardrop wheels. 16 valves actually rev and make a little bit of horsepower. JP, isn't it like 125, 130 horsepower and
Nah,
similar
it's like
torque?
117, I want to say, but it's
Oh, no,
under. It's under.
123.
Yeah, it's what's that? Is it 123?
123 and 120 of torque when new, which is pretty cool. And look, don't read the numbers. The car is out of its own way. These are fun to drive. Enough so that as you're kind of pumping all that power through the front wheel drive system, that steering wheel, and you are in a wrestling match if you're turning while you're trying to go fast. These cars are a handful to drive and a blast while doing so. I've always been a huge fan. The Mark II is my favorite generation of the car, and I don't know that an 8-valve, even though my partner JP always recommends that they are fantastic quality cars, I'm a horsepower geek, and I think I would have to have a 16-valve. JP, tell me while I'm wrong. This is a really cool car. I think it's worth all the money.
Not knocking 16 valves at all. I mean, they're fantastic. Look, a 16 valve version of this has enough power to have a great time, and at the time it was a lot of power. But the 8 valves have a little bit more torque, and you can build them much more easily. The 16 valves are a little bit difficult to get more power out of. Wow. Honestly, who cares? I mean, this car, the way it is so clean. I mean, I'm just looking at this and I'm just having flashbacks. I mean, I had one of these. I had buddies that had these. I mean, we were Volkswagen nuts, and this car is just, I can smell this car. I mean, there is a distinct Volkswagen aroma that goes with those velour seats, and those stripes even have a specific smell. That steering wheel, the silver dollar steering wheel. I mean, there's just so many. God, and the red pinstriping. I mean, I can't believe. Look at the dash. Look at the door cards. The 16 valve badge is there. Even the boot doesn't look like it's all beat up. Usually, I mean, most of them looked all beat up back in the 80s. So the fact that this one isn't is just unbelievable. The stupid
JP,
switches, huh? Yeah.
16,000 miles. I mean, JP, if you had this car, you'd put 16,000 miles on it in 1 year.
Yeah. I mean, look up if you're out there on the internet and you don't know these cars, just look up Volkswagen Mark II 3 wheels. There's a million pictures on the internet. When these things go around the corner, one wheel lifts. The opposite camber wheel is always off the ground when they're going around the corners, but they don't roll over. They stick. It's just amazing. That's just a character trait. But yeah, torque steer like a sumbitch, but you're just going to have a good time in this car. Wow, I'm just shocked how clean this thing is. Yeah.
JP, I have a question now. I thought, I'm really studying this car, and I'm not a massive fan. I've always been a fan from the side. I thought all these like 16 valves had 4 round headlights. What is it about this 87 that has the square headlights? Is that does that mean it's an unusual car, or was that what they were in 87 and then they switched later to the round headlights? Can you explain to the audience what the
round headlights
the
came with the big bumpers when they did the upgrade, kind of the facelift in 90? It may have been 89, 90, something like that. Some of the earlier ones now, they all had square headlights. I'm trying to think the Rabbits and the GTIs had square headlights until they went to the bigger bumper. So these are considered, they're kind of like BMW has what they call diving board bumpers on the E30s, of the era. You can see that, these bumpers kind of stick out. Whereas the later ones, they put a bumper that was kind of rounded, covers the whole back end, kind of like the 964 changed from the impact bumper to the newer style bumper, but was still essentially the same, chassis underneath. Man, I'm just geeking out over this car. I would totally be interested in buying it, but it's just way too expensive. Is as awesome as it is, and as great to see a low mile one, and as much as I think that, it's worth these crazy numbers. I just can't. I could never bring myself. That's how much they were new. I don't think I could ever bring myself to spend $20,000 on one of these. I would way rather have a facelift one, like a 90, 91, 92. And then, by the way, some of them had 4 headlights, some of them had 2 when they went to the round one. So.
Yeah, I love the 4 headlight design because the outboard lights are big and the inboard lights
Yeah.
are a smaller diameter. And I just think it's one of the prettiest front ends Volkswagens have ever made. And I love those cars. The Jetta GLI and the GTIs from these Mark II generation of cars. So this is a really cool early one. Aesthetically, the square headlights don't do it for me as much. I would probably, like you, hold out for even a higher
Easy
mileage
conversion.
version.
Easy
Really?
conversion. Yeah.
Oh, well, then the hell with it. Then I should be all over this car. I might go down and see him today. It's in San Mateo. It's about 25 minutes from here.
Go get it.
Yeah. All right, JP. So I thought this car might bring $18,000. I'm going to put $1,000 on. I'm going to go 19,000 is my bid, and I'm going to stand there. I think it sells for no resurrection. It's going to sell. So I think there's going to be a late rally for this car. It wouldn't surprise me if it brought more. GLI that we saw brought 18 grand. This car is arguably in nicer condition because it wasn't restored. It's just been preserved. So I think, it could break 20 for all I know, but I'm going to say 19 grand and sit there.
I mean, the two-door GTI is way more desirable than a Jetta. So, I'm shocked that it's so few bids. But I think people know that this thing's probably going to bring some big money. I'm going to say 20 and say there could be sky on this thing. I mean,
it could, yeah. There could. This car could bring 24 grand.
Yeah, if it did, I'd be like, okay, it's time. It's time for that to happen. Because you're right. I mean, you're not finding another one of these.
No, not like that. Hopefully, JP, the bring a trailer. Here we go. Minutia is that if this car breaks $20,000, we can expect a lot of Mark II Volkswagen products to hit the market over the next couple months, and that'd be really fun. We'd be the better for it. So there you go.
Yep.
All right. JP, a car I know nothing about. This 1988 Pontiac Fiero GT. So the Fiero came in 3 different models. The GT, presumably by the which is Grand Touring, should be the sportiest of the 3, but I do not know what that includes when you upgrade to a GT trim level on your 1988 Pontiac Fiero. I also want the audience to know I don't care because I never liked these cars. This one is in very nice condition with just 32,000 miles, 32,000 original miles. Offered to us, JP, out of Albuquerque, New Mexico. The consignor purchased the car on Bring a Trailer in August of 2020, so just a few months ago, and he paid $18,250 for the car.
Whoa.
The car is sitting at $11,000 on 9 bids. JP, I'm not Miss Chloe. I don't have a crystal ball, but I am willing to bet that he's not getting his money out of this car. So where did they set the reserve? And is this guy about to lose $2,000 or $3,000? Talk to me. What do you think?
How many miles are we talking on this thing?
32,000 original miles, and he bought it in August for $18,250. It's at $10,750 right now on 9 bids. Or 8 bids, something like that.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Let's see. I mean, look, these cars. Look, Fieros suck. I mean, there's no doubt about it. They're Pontiacs. They fall apart. They're absolute hunks of shit. Most of them. I dropped an S-bomb. Most of them have the crappy little 4-cylinder. Most of them have the notchback. This is actually the has the speed back with the coupe, and I think that's a factory wing too, and the nose and everything. I mean, this
and the wheels.
Yeah, as nice a Fiero as you can possibly find. They're actually, I mean, look, the V6 in this thing, we're not talking about anything that's crazy, but it's actually kind of fun, man. It's a little torquey. It's got a 4-speed. I mean, look, again, I'm not advocating going out and buying a Fiero. If you could buy one of these for $4 or $5 grand, something like this, hell yeah. But boy, at this number, look, most of them, because they were cheap for so darn long, most of them got converted to kit cars. I mean, this is the car that everybody put a fake Countach on or a fake 355, or whatever. But yeah, I mean, these are, man. Yeah, I think you'd be surprised how much you'd like this car until like you went to get out of it and the door handle came off when you were trying to get out. Or
JP, before I spent a dime on one of those, I would buy 3 Toyota MR2 turbos before I buy a single Pontiac Fiero. I guarantee you, I'd become an MR2 fan overnight instead of buying this effing Fiero. There's no way I would ever do it. Paul Jarrett, our favorite general sales manager at Godden Porsche in Las Vegas, Nevada, has said vehemently because I think he's just a product of the era. That the Pontiac Fiero is one of, if not his actual all-time favorite car, which cracks me up to no end. I never did. I never bought I never drank the Kool-Aid. Not my jam. I don't think this car is ever gonna get this guy his money back. As such, JP, I'm gonna say $16,000, and this guy's in a world of hurt.
That is a tough bet. Where do we go from here? It's sitting at what now?
Let me read it to you. It is at
11,000 with an hour to go.
On 9 bids. So I'm guessing it's going to bring $5,000 more, and this guy's going to lose $2,500 on the process or more.
All right. I'm going a grand more than you. I'm gonna say it's gonna make it. I'm gonna say it's gonna make. This is a. There are people that like Fieros out there, and
there are.
And this is the nicest. This is as nice or nicer than that GTI that we just looked at.
But you're making my argument for me. There are people that like Fieros out there, and he's the guy. He spent $18,000 on this car 5 months ago, and your bet at a $17,000 means he's going to lose $1,500. So
I'm just staying tight. I wouldn't be surprised if this thing makes 20. I really wouldn't. Yeah, I
would definitely would. All right, man.
We'll see. All right.
Our last car of the day, JP, there's a lot of data that comes with this car because this is, and again, I'm not a 356 guy. You and I are both Porsche heads, but our love for the cars really starts with the 911. So the 356 is before my time. This is a kit car, JP. It is a Porsche 356 Pre A Continental Coupe replica by Vintage Motor Cars in California. And it sits, John, on a 1961 Volkswagen chassis, employing that generation's flat 4. I think it's like 1,500 cc's. So not a lot of power, but a ton of eyeball. If this were a real, and that's not even the right Continental emblem, by the way. If this were a real Continental, it would be in a complete fixer in need of a restoration. They would bring $150,000, and if the car was spectacular and say a Continental convertible, they could bring as much as $375,000, almost $400,000. So your average Continental brings over $200,000, close to $300,000. So the interesting thing is this: when Porsche was starting to import the 356 to the United States, they made a top of the line model called the Continental, and when that car landed on our shores, Ford already owned Lincoln, and Ford filed a lawsuit to Porsche saying, we own the Lincoln brand, and Lincoln has a model called the Continental that is for sale in the United States. You cannot use the name. So Porsche dropped the Continental name after something like 80 or 120 Continentals had been built and brought to the United States. So the Continental winds up being, in the footnotes of Porsche's history, one of the rarest models that Porsche brought to market. But as such, the original Continentals were top-of-the-line cars. They had all the bells and whistles. The thing that's interesting about our kit car is it's showing the sports seats that would have come in either a Carrera GT or a Speedster. I don't think these sporty, less comfortable half-shell seats would have been in a Continental because the Continental was meant to be a top-of-the-line with all the luxury amenities. So this guy's interpretation of a Continental replica, I take issue with. But again, I could be wrong about the seats in a real Continental, and this might be a faithful execution. I could be off. But there you go, a Continental replica by Vintage Motor Cars of California. What do you think, JP?
Yeah, look, this. Sorry, guys, I'm doing some technical stuff here. This car, I think most of the stuff is pretty period correct. I mean, you're right. I don't think those seats wind up coming with this car at the time, but I mean, they are seats that would have been around for the era.
In a Porsche.
Yeah, I mean, certainly would have been in a Speedster or whatever. It's interesting that they're heated. I mean, that obviously was something that definitely did not, and that's got modern heated switch buttons. But there's some details here that are really, really good. I mean, the steering column is not a Volkswagen steering column. I mean, that's usually one of the really obvious tells, the big plastic piece underneath, so the steering column, steering wheel, the parking brake on the left, a lot of times you see, like a Volkswagen would have the parking brake in the middle. And that's usually like an immediate tell. Look into a 356. If it has a parking brake right down here in the center tunnel, it's a Volkswagen. This one, the steering wheel, the door handles, the way the sill down here is kind of connecting. A lot of times in the Volkswagens, they have like a big kind of header on here. Look, the thing is, the thing about this car is that it's a coupe. I mean, you see a ton of speedster replicas everywhere, right? There's gajillions of them, but you just never see a coupe replica. So, I mean, the thing is, as someone who has owned a speedster replica, I never tried to pass it off as a real one. I never, who cares? Everyone knows that it's kind of, most people assume that it's a replica because real ones are just so rare. Something like this, I think most people are going to assume it's a real one. It's going to take someone with a really good eye to be able to tell one way or the other. I would not put the Continental badge on it. I'm with you. I would just remove that and just.
Well, and I don't think he used the right one. The Continental script is very distinctive, and the handwriting, the cursive script Continental badge that he has on this car, I'm telling you, JP, I'd bet you a buffalo nickel that's not the faithful execution to the way Porsche did it. So it's really interesting. It is interesting too. I forgot to mention that this car has heated seats and power windows. They definitely slipped a few modern amenities into the car, and this build only has 2,800 miles on it since it was originally made for its first customer.
It sure is pretty, though. I mean, this is a beautiful car. I mean, the engine probably would have been better if it were, if you're going through the trouble, hop it up, put a 2-liter in there, or 1.9. That's all.
Right?
I don't know why they stuck with a 15 or 1600. I mean, it is a dual carb though, so it might have a little extra poop. Look, I don't know. This car is super light because it's made of fiberglass, so it's not going to have any trouble getting out of its own way. You're not going to be winning any races. How well does it handle? I don't know. You can make these handle pretty remarkably well. I mean, it's a Volkswagen chassis. It's going to be really interesting to see where this goes because you just don't see replica coupes very often. So you got a sense of where it's going to go?
Out of Hawaiian Gardens, California, on a California black plate, which would have been correct to the period, with just 2,800 miles on it. It's really interesting. Like I said, real Continentals bring real collector money, but this thing, and JP, I misrepresented it. It does have an 1,800 cc flat.
Okay. This thing probably rips. Yeah.
I apologize for saying 1,500 cc's. 1,500 cc's was the motor that came in a real Continental. But anyways, at $45,000 on 17 bids, I think this car is easily going to bring another 10 grand or more. So I'm going to say $55,000 and it sells.
Yeah. I mean, it can't get much more than that because, just a week ago or two, we saw, a genuine 356 coupe. Now, it wasn't a Continental. It was the later one and stuff like that. Yeah. But a real driver went for 80. You can get real 356 coupes for this kind of money. They're out there. They might be but which would you rather? If you're going to spend $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 on a 356, would you rather have a real one that has patina and needs, restoration, but is a driver, or would you rather have this unbelievably beautifully, perfectly done replica? Real question.
I'd probably have the real Porsche.
I mean, of course you would. Who wouldn't? I mean, what are we doing?
And it's all beat up. And you and I mean, the way we like to mess with our cars, I think we can make a 356 really cool. I'd drop the bumpers off a 356 and get some wheels, and it'd be cool.
Come on, yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, there's just no question about it. So the fact that this one could bring 55 is just like, okay. I mean, I think you're right. There are those. I mean, man, I was going to name names, but there's people in town here in Las Vegas that like the pleated shorts, and they'll go out and spend all the money in the world on 356 replica that has a Subaru engine in it and has the power windows and the air conditioning and all that kind of stuff.
Sacrilege.
And they'll sit there and they'll turn their nose up at at one that has a Volkswagen engine and just like, get out of here. So that there is a crowd for this, and there's a certain segment of the PCA crowd that would rather have this than a real one, oddly enough. So you're at 55. Gosh, I gotta agree with you. I'm gonna go over. I think it's gonna go a little more. I'll go 57. I'll even give you. You said 55. I'll go 57 to make it. I won't go the dollar over. I'll give it a spread. But I can't get 60. Can it? Can it?
I think it could, just because, like you said, first of all, most of the replicas aren't coupes, and this one has modern amenities to boot. So it could bring 60. I'm sure this build was pretty expensive.
Yeah, that's what I want to know is how much was it to build this?
Oh man, yeah.
I mean, how do you build something for less than that?
Once, JP, correct me if I'm wrong, but once you get over $100,000 for a build on one of these things, wouldn't you rather have a Runge?
Yeah, was it a Runge? Yeah.
Runge, yeah. I'd much rather at 150. I'd talk myself into buying one of those.
Can you get one of those at that number anymore? I feel like those have like skyrocketed, but I don't know.
They
I don't
probably
know. They
have.
were
They
not
should.
that long ago. Yeah.
They should.
I remember you could get those for $25,000. Yeah.
Oh my God, we should have bought one. They're so cool. And
yeah, the F001 or whatever it was I remember that's how I learned about Runge. It was on eBay or something like that, and it was like $19,000 and it made up to 25. I was like, oh my God, look at the thing. Anyways, whole other story. Guys, that is Bid Nerds for the day. Thank you guys for watching. You're a car nerd. You're an auction nerd. You have found your people. We are the Bid Nerds. Be a third nerd. Get on the on our YouTube channel and give us some comments. Let us know if you think we're complete idiots or if you think we're right on. Tell us what you think your bids on the cars would be or should be. Look, play along. This is a fun game to play and keep track with us as we look at the most interesting cars on Cars and Bids and bring a trailer every day at the 9 o'clock hour-ish. Thanks for joining us. Hit subscribe, like, share. Let everybody know that this channel exists. We're looking for our people and we're finding them every day, and we really appreciate you guys. Thanks for watching. Be here tomorrow at about the same time for another episode and the final episode of the week of Bid Nerds. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Michael Deeb.